Hi, today I'm going to give you an introduction and a brief description of what is EC2 on AWS. So before we get into EC2 and its specifics, I'd like to give a brief example and a story to further understand EC2. So there is a scientist out there in the woods and he has to process something. He's built like this impressive piece of software he wants to run. He wants to see some results. He puts it on his old system and he runs it. After a few hours, the system gives up. So in this case, the scientist is disappointed. Then let's say a friend introduces him, you know what, there's something called AWS. It's Amazon Web Services. It's a cloud service provider who provides platforms and softwares as a service. There's something called EC2, Elastic Container Cloud. You can use this to get a virtual system. Now, virtual systems are no different from a computer that you go buy, but instead you have this computer on the cloud and you pay for it as much as you use it. So there's something called a pay-as-you-go model, where Amazon says that, you know what, if you're taking a system from me, you just pay me by the hour. So how does EC2 work? So there's this technology called virtualization. I'm sure many people are aware of softwares like VMware and Oracle VMs. So AWS is something similar. There's a system that's provisioned for you on the cloud which you pay for. So to get started, you can simply log on to AWS. So the prerequisites would be you need an AWS account which you can go have and tie it up to your debit or credit card from AWS websites. When you get an EC2, the first thing to do is you have to decide what type of system do you want. So EC2 provides you all these features where you get started with choosing what sort of instance you want. So let's say you want to deploy a simple web application. You might not need a lot of configuration, a lot of RAM. So maybe let's say you need 2 GB of RAM and just 40 GB of a hard disk space and a simple Intel processor. So when you go to EC2, there are tiers of instances with their separate hardware specifications. You can just go choose one. Then you have to choose your operating system. So the most commonly used operating systems are Windows, Linux, Solaris, and so many more. But if you feel that, alright, I have a license, I don't need an operating system, you just take a blank EC2 and you install your OS on top of it and then you get started. But Amazon also provides you a marketplace where you can get something called AMIs. That's Amazon Machine Images. These are like system images or snapshots of operating systems that Amazon has put in its marketplace from its vendors. So if you go there after you've chosen your hardware specs, you will see that there are different OSs available from different vendors, ranging from some OSs which have softwares pre-installed on it and some vanilla OSs where you are free to install whatever you want. So after this is done, we have to go to networking and security. I think that's the basic necessity of any software development environment that you would go for if you have a system. It's somewhat similar to your firewalls, your inbound and your outbound rules. So these are called security groups in AWS. You attach a security group, you allow which ports to be opened up for your web services, for your REST services, for your web sockets, or any handshaking TCP UDP connections that you want your web server to communicate with, and you're all set. The final step is to attach a hard drive. Now I'm sure it's a very common practice that when you get a system, we normally partition the system from its system drive to an external drive. Normally Windows users would go for something called a C drive and a D drive and so forth. When you get an EC2, your system drive is already there by default, but you might also need a flexible extra space. So here comes something called elastic block store, where AWS gives you the flexibility of choosing between different types of hard disks, ranging from solid state drives to standard magnetic hard drives, and you choose your input and output speed, you choose your how much GB of space you want, and you're good to go. The last step would be AWS allows you to give tags for each and every resource, or in our case of this discussion, a VM, which is an EC2. It allows you to tag this because in practical environments, many companies have a lot of servers on Amazon. For example, I'm sure you're all aware that Netflix and even NASA are on AWS, which means they'll have over 500 to 600 EC2 servers. Just so you know that when it comes to managing these servers, just to understand what server is dedicated to which task, you can tag them by names so that I can filter and search them easily later. Once all these settings are done, it takes a few seconds for your EC2 to get created and you're ready to go. The advantage of EC2 is it's on the cloud, you pay for what you use, and it's completely a very efficient way of running different kinds of programs, especially if you are focusing on scale. Now, when people talk about scalability on the cloud, it's mostly because you can increase and dynamically decrease your VMs, systems, hardware specs on the go based on your application's load. So let's say you've developed an application where, let's say it's something as simple as a WhatsApp messenger or some photo sharing tool, and today you have 1000 users. Your EC2 has 2 GB of RAM and it's doing fine. Let's say tomorrow suddenly there's a website and something called a flash sale happens, or maybe you have a lot of people talking over your messenger application that you've built over the new year. A lot of messages are coming through, a lot of people are using it. Your system may overload. So if you increase these hardware specifications dynamically, which you call vertical scaling, then your system increases its specs when the load is high and it goes down when the load is low. So that's an advantage. And the best part about all these things is these things are all flexible, which means you can have a cluster of so many servers where AWS maintains patching and releasing of all these systems from their side, and all you have to do is maintain the applications that you deployed on your side. So this is what AWS calls shared responsibility model, where both parties are responsible for whatever software you use. Coming to EC2s, EC2s are a good way where you can deploy a different variety of softwares for different tasks. It can range from a 3-tier web application, it can host the backend of your mobile application. Since it's a VM, AWS also allows special VMs to be provisioned. So these are mostly under computation processes. AWS has a lot of services do different tasks, some are databases, some are migration. This is specifically for processing code. You can also use EC2s which have a GPU attached to it. I believe mostly AWS uses NVIDIA GPUs. You can also use these GPUs to learn your machine learning code. You can run TensorFlow, you can run Keras, you can run big data visualization tools. So the possibilities are endless. EC2s are something that have been trending for a long time, and I believe that there are certain companies who've already migrated a lot of their infrastructure to the cloud. VMs are a core importance to your company's infrastructure. So VMs have to be monetized, and so AWS has different tiers of VMs. We've discussed how to create an EC2. Now we understand what an EC2 is and how people would use it. Now the question is, what type of EC2 is suited for you? So AWS has different types of servers they provision. The first type is called a spot instance. A spot instance is a server that people in access to AWS, you sort of bid for the price. The highest bidder gets the server, but the disadvantage is you can lose the server anytime you want. The second type is on demand. On demand is you pay per hour for every hour that you use. There's no other bindings to it. Reserved instances are instances where AWS says, you know what, I'll give you a discount. You pay me upfront the day the instance is provided to you, but you have to take it for 1 year or 3 years. It's like a contract. And the last is a dedicated instance where AWS doesn't give you a shared resource as a server, as a virtual server. It gives you the entire rack of the servers to you. So concluding with an example, you go to a hotel. So let's say the hotel is AWS, right? And you say, excuse me, I want a room. And say, okay sir, what type of room do you want? See, I'll stay for a day, I'll stay for 2 days, so I'll pay for 2 days. That's fine. So that's on-demand instances. Now imagine a bunch of people going to the hotel and say, there's just one room and all of you bid for the room. The highest bidder gets the room, but you can be kicked out anytime they want. So that's spot instances. Reserved instances are like you pay just maybe 30% of the actual value of the room, but you pay for a year upfront the day you go to the hotel, and you take that entire room for a year. That's reserved instances. And finally, you go and you see you're an important guy, you have an important task, we want to feel royal, and you go to the hotel and you say, give me the entire floor. That's dedicated instances. So these are the type of instances that AWS EC2 provides. The final description of how an EC2 behaves is, it's very since it's a web based, it's a web server, you can launch web servers on it, it's a virtual machine. It can talk to every other AWS resource that's on AWS. So which means if you have a giant architecture where you have a lot of things talking to each other, you can have VMs talk to all these services and get connected. So that's my description of what AWS EC2 is, and I hope that it has been an insightful description of it, and I hope this helps you out. Thank you.